If you're watching this channel, it's because you don't enjoy watching the world squander what Christendom built, but you want to do your part. And chances are you've heard me mention a great means by doing just that. Email made by and for Catholics. Check out fidei.email. That's FIDEI.email. Built for Catholic individuals, families, organizations, and groups. They're private, secure, and of course, they're Catholic. And they're offering 2 months off on your first year for an annual subscription if you enter the coupon code Return to Tradition without spaces. That's the name of this channel, without spaces, at checkout. Last week I brought to you the news of bishops warning and priests warning the faithful about the scheme to radically decentralize the church. This synodal scheme. About the same time, one of the chief reformers of the church in America, who has been trying to impose on the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Francis's vision for the Catholic Church, despite their very great attempts to ignore him entirely, he gave an interview to America magazine where he celebrated the synod. He called what they were doing a revolution in the church. His word, not mine. You'll hear that in a moment. And the great takeaway for all of this is that those promoting synodality do not trust the magisterium of the church as it existed before Vatican II. In Vatican II, this is not just the usual traditionalist complaints about Vatican II. The synodalists claim that they are fulfilling Vatican II, that this is an outgrowth of Vatican II. Again, you'll hear Cardinal McElroy say that yourself here. But it's a revolution. That's what he says, in the church. It's also novelty. He has said this elsewhere. Doctors of the church have told us that regardless of whoever it is in the church preaching novelty, we are to resist them. St. Vincent of Lerins said that in the commentary. It's all the permission you need to cling rigidly, and like a clericalist, I guess, to the same Catholic faith that developed organically from the time of the apostles until about 60 years ago, when suddenly novelty came to be the rule. Let's go to American Magazine for this headline. Interview: Why Cardinal McElroy is very happy with the results of the synod. He's very happy because it allows for the decentralization of authority in the church. The entire problem with synodality is governance. It's because from governance, you can get the doctrinal changes you want if you change how the church is governed. And the core message of synodality is to bring the laity up in accordance with democratic values of the secular world, to give them the voice, a very serious voice and role in decision-making processes. And from there, everything else will flow. Just look back, bring to your mind the Pew Data research and other polling firms that have shown consistently that the typical Catholic and the typical pew of the typical Mass in the Western world in your Novus Ordo parish does not agree with the Church's teaching on virtually any of the hot-button issues. Or even not so hot-button issues, like basic Catholic dogma, like the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. And when you see that, and you understand that these are the same laity that they want to elevate into the Church to give input and decision-making authority on doctrine to, begin to see what it is that makes Cardinal McElroy so very happy here. From the article, quote, I'd say it came out in various ways rooted in Scripture and our tradition, pointing to Mary Magdalene as the apostle to the apostles. Her pivotal role really was the lead into the whole discussion of women in the life of the Church. The very important assertion was that the majority of the work done in the Church is done by women. I believe that it is true of basically every culture. That is certainly true in our cultures in the West. But in the final document, there's a very important assertion. It says there have been obstacles placed in the way of women effectively ministering as they should be allowed to minister in the life of the Church. And in the Synodal Church, we're going to try to address those and move forward with them. What they're saying is virtually with the exception of ordained ministry, they wish to move toward eliminating all gender-based obstacles to women exercising a variety of ministries. It is a revolution. And also, what's important is there's a task force set up in terms of canon law to try to reform these obstacles, to identify them, which are sometimes obstacles against laity in general, and try to remove those so that the ministries of the Church can be freer, fuller, and more robust. End quote. The ministries of the Church are already freer, fuller, and more robust than they had been previously. Elsewhere, Cardinal McElroy admits that while Francis sort of closed the door on ordained women's diaconate, that he endorses ordaining women to the diaconate. and that the question is open because the Synod on Synodality has said, and Francis endorsed the document that said it, that the question remains open for fuller investigation and fuller discussion. That means we're not out of the woods yet on that issue. Cardinal McElroy celebrates that. Again, he is a promoter of novelty, and he used the word revolution. You heard him say it there. It is a revolution in the Church. It's not me being hyperbolic. I am merely quoting a cardinal archbishop or a cardinal bishop in his case, who is the voice of Pope Francis in the United States. That is what they want to do to the Church. They use the language of a new church when they describe synodality, about building a synodal church. That is what they're doing. Take them at their word. But it doesn't get much better. From the article, quote, I think it brings forward a number of the principles embedded in the heart of Vatican II, particularly in Lumen Gentium, the dogmatic constitution on the Church, and Gaudium et Spes, the pastoral constitution on the Church in the modern world. But I think the Synod is embedded clearly in the lineage of the Council, Vatican II, and the application of the Council, the spirit of Vatican II, and the discernment of what the Council calls for in this moment. It also brings many of those trajectories farther into the heart of the Church, in the area of deliberation, decision-making, and discernment. It sets up particular structures that had not been established as universal structures that need to be present now at all levels in the life of the Church. Giving structure for that will help bring those principles of the Council and then synodality itself into the daily life of the Church in a deeper way. It is, and in the light of the present moment too. In light of the present moment in cultures, I want to emphasize again, in light of there being in that room lay people in large numbers who participated and who helped to deliberate on it and had votes on it. That is a difference in terms of taking the Council forward. End quote. This is the implementation of Vatican II, and to the things that emerge from the spirit of Vatican II, the formalization of these governance structures. And a good example of this, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and its sister organizations in every country on the planet have no canonical standing. They are a fabrication of the post-conciliar order. There are plenty of arguments in favor for such organizations existing, and plenty of arguments in opposition to it. But synodality would formalize that. It would formalize their existence, and it would bring lay people into the decision-making matrix there. And that is how then you get your doctrinal changes about who can receive Holy Communion, what kind of marriages can be blessed by the Church, whether or not certain sins cry out to heaven for justice or not. It goes on and on and on, because they want to bring lay people into the decision-making process on doctrine, and they want to have those national bishops' conferences be made to have doctrinal authority in the Church for deciding what is doctrinal in their national bishops' conferences. This is the Anglicanization of the Catholic Church. That is what Cardinal McElroy is celebrating here. Do you celebrate that? Are you surprised that he is being so very open about his desire for revolution in the Church? Let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps. So does sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.